Hey everyone, George here, and welcome back to the channel. So I want to talk to you today about something that's a little bit unorthodox, something that I don't normally talk about, and that is why fish die and we don't know why. I'm not trying to be a rhymer here or anything, that just happened to be the way that came out, but there are reasons why fish die suddenly, and the two main reasons are, number one, bloat. That's from possibly too much food or new kind of food that maybe swelled up in their stomach or something like that and created a problem where they get that kind of pine cone looking scales on them. And then there's old age, and a lot of times with old age we have no idea how old fish are when we first get them, and that's the troubling part about having fish that we get that are a little larger than what we would expect them to be, and we don't really know how old they are. They could be as much as 2 years old by the time we get them. So if you, for example, I had a fish die the other day, which I rarely have happen, but it was a McMaster Episto that passed away. But I could see that even a year ago that he was looking a little bit rough and aging quite a bit. And one of the signs of that is loss of color and energy and that sort of thing. But they will act fairly normal right up until the day that they die. So I believe that this one died the other day of probably natural causes of death by age. So it's one of those things that you want to think about when you're getting fish. Make sure that you get some idea about how old your fish are so that you have an understanding of what their lifespan should be. For an Episto, 5 to 7 years is pretty normal. This guy that I had, I believe, was right around 6.5 to 7 years old that I lost. So it's not unusual to lose a fish now and then, and I know it's hard because we get attached to these fish, especially ones with personality. Epistos are certainly one of those fish that have that, and it does happen though. So we have to know kind of where we're at on age. Now with discus fish, it's not that hard because discus, basically if you've got a 3 to a 3.5 inch discus fish, you're probably looking at a fish that's close to a year old, and we know that discus can live up to 15 years. Not typically, but in ideal conditions that can happen. The typical life of a discus fish in very good conditions is around 10 years. So we know by that kind of fish what we can expect of a lifespan. And other than disease, if your water conditions are good and everything, your discus fish should live about that amount of time. So check on the kinds of fish that you're getting, what the life expectation would be as far as their lifespan. Look those things up, do that kind of research before you buy fish for your tank, and know about them before you buy them. This will give you some understanding of what your expectation should be for the life of that fish. And sudden death is a difficult thing in our tanks because it leads us to believe that maybe there's something wrong in our tank. I believe that these things happen for lots of different reasons. Fish can get diseases of their own. They can get cancers. They can get internal problems that we don't know about. That's just a natural progression of the life of a fish, and you can have a sudden death because of that. Or, like I said, bloat is probably the most common thing other than old age that I've seen as far as all of the tanks that I have. That's probably the most common that you're going to see. Now, one of the things that I want to remind you is that every fish that you have has a different lifespan. So when you're mixing fish in a community tank, you may lose a fish, and don't gauge that against the rest of the fish in your tank because all fish are different. Like I said, do your homework. Make sure you have an understanding of how long these fish are supposed to live, how big they're supposed to get, and all of these things to make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into. So, like I said, uh, it's not a fun thing to have a fish die on you, but it's not uncommon for a fish to die of old age or sudden death if they have a disease of some kind that all of us could have. With human beings, when we get sick, we go to a doctor. Fish can't do that. We have to diagnose everything for the fish to make sure that they're in good shape. If your fish is acting absolutely normal and then just starts to drag a little bit, they lose their color, they're getting that kind of ragged looking, kind of like an old man getting gray hair or whatever. If they're starting to look like that, it probably means that that fish is reaching the pinnacle of its life and is going to likely not live much longer. So pay attention to those things in your tank, and if something happens, it's just a normal process of having a tank. Losing fish is something that is hard to deal with, but it is very normal. Don't think that you necessarily have a huge problem with your tank. Now, if you have a huge die-off of fish in your tank, you've got a problem on your hands, and you need to address that immediately. If that's the last thing I tell you in this video, that is something when you have a large die-off of fish that you are going to have a situation where you need to address it very quickly to figure out what's going on so that you don't lose your whole tank, and get on that right away. But this was an isolated incident for me, and I kind of saw it coming, like I said, a year ago. So pay attention. Do a health check on your fish. I do that every morning to make sure that my fish look a certain way, or behaving a certain way, a way in which you would expect them to behave. And then when you look at your fish, if you start to see something unusual going on with a particular fish, you can look at it by how old it might be and say to yourself, okay, that's not normal, so I need to maybe look at something where I need to isolate that fish in some kind of a quarantine tank or hospital tank and start figuring out what's going on with that fish. But if you see a large variety of your fish all having problems at the same time, you've got a problem in your tank, and that needs to be addressed right away. But again, keep an isolation tank, keep you can call it whatever you want, quarantine, hospital, whatever kind of tank that's in absolutely good shape. Make sure that that tank is as well taken care of as any other tank that you have in your gallery, so that you are ready for a fish to go in there if need be, and you can just make some minor adjustments to the water or whatever to make sure that that fish is in ideal conditions for the type of fish that it is. But like I said, this fish that I had die off the other day was something that was probably just old age. There's nothing going on in the tank. I've been observing the tank since that happened, and nobody else is sick. There's no other indications that any of the fish in the tank are sick, so we'll chalk it up to that one. Well, thank you for watching today. If you have any comments you'd like to leave them down below there. Please give me that thumbs up, subscribe, and of course share the video with your friends. We got a lot of great stuff coming up. Like I said, I have a new build, as I told you in my last video. That one should be coming up here in the next week or so. We're going to do the full scape on that. We're going to talk about the equipment. We're going to talk about everything. It's going to be a very detailed, probably a much longer video than you would like. But I'm not trying to be George Farmer or anybody like that, but we're going to get into it a little bit more deep and talk about that tank more specifically, and how it went together and what I'm putting in there. This is going to be a German discus tank only. And I'm real excited about it because I've had these fish for quite a while, and they've been in quarantine, and I'm ready to get them into their forever home tank, and pretty excited. So thank you for joining me today. I hope I will see you on the next one. Until then, we are out of here.